This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we will execute these scenarios probably tomorrow once the server is up. Now we will try to talk about different points related to Subledger. Subledger accounting. When we're talking about Subledger accounting, basically we're talking about 3 points here. We will be dealing with 3 types of Subledger. Point number 1, vendors. Point number 2 is customers. Point number 3 is your fixed assets. Everybody is aware of these 3 points, right? Vendor, customer, and then fixed asset.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? Vendor is a subledger, customer is a subledger, fixed asset is also subledger. When you're talking about vendor, we are representing accounts payable here. When we're talking about customer, we're talking about accounts receivable here. When it comes to fixed asset, this is called as asset accounting here. Now, in vendor or in accounts payable, what normally will happen, anything related to vendor is part of your accounts payable, is part of subledger. Here, in short, any transaction related to vendors. Here, any transaction related to customers. Here, any transaction related to fixed assets. Okay, if you find vendor account in any transaction, either vendor debited or vendor credited, it is part of your subledger accounts payable. Similarly, you find any customer anywhere in any transaction, either debited or credited, your customer account is part of accounts receivable subledger posting. Blindly you think that anything related to customer account is a subledger accounts receivable AR module. Similarly, anywhere you find asset, fixed asset, either debited or credited, straight away this is your asset accounting transaction. Meaning, first point, be in a position to understand, recognize that this is related to subledger transaction, related to AP module, AR module, or fixed asset module. Now here, when you're talking about vendor, specifically accounts payable, with vendor, what normally we will do? What do you do with vendor?
Purchase.
Usual purchases, services.
Purchases, sir.
Right? We will be doing purchase related transaction with the vendor. And for customer?
Sales.
Sales.
Customer, it will be sales. For asset, both purchase and sale?
Sales, both.
Yes, sir. Both.
Yes, here you will do purchases, here you will do sales, and you will also do specifically called depreciation. Agree? For fixed asset, you need to understand, you will do purchases, you will do sale. At the same time, you will also do depreciation on the fixed asset. Now, here, when you're talking about your balance sheet representation or financial statement presentation, if I show you balance sheet, okay, in balance sheet, you have 2 points. One is liability, another one is assets. Liabilities, amount, assets, amount, and let me put this here. These are your assets, these are your liabilities. Now, looking at this balance sheet, if I talk about vendor or accounts payable, in balance sheet, This vendor or accounts payable is part of asset or liability?
Liability. Liability.
This
Liabilities.
is part of liability. Under liability inside the balance sheet, do we write vendor name or do we write accounts payable?
Accounts payable, sir.
Accounts payable.
Right? We will write accounts payable here. You will write somewhere around accounts payable. I'll put some value here. Next thing, when you're talking about customer, inside the balance sheet, customer account is part of asset or liability?
Asset.
Asset.
This is
Yeah.
part of asset. Now, in the asset, do we write customer account or accounts receivable?
Accounts receivable.
Accounts receivable.
We will write this as accounts receivable. I'll put some amount here also. Similarly, when you have a fixed asset, this fixed asset in balance sheet is represented under asset or under liability?
Asset.
This will be represented under asset as fixed asset, right? Are these 3 points clear, everyone? How these are represented in the balance sheet?
Yes, sir.
First point, you'll have to make sure you are clear with these 3 points: asset, liability, where you are going to represent your subledger accounting. Accounts payable or vendor related transaction will straight away go to liability side. Accounts receivable or customer related balances will go to asset side. Fixed asset balances will also go to asset side. Now here, when you are looking at liabilities first, we are writing accounts payable. In accounts payable, are we going to write vendor name in the balance sheet or we don't write vendor name in balance sheet?
We don't write, sir. Only
Right? In the balance sheet, under liabilities side, we are not going to write vendor name in any financial statement. Instead of writing vendor name in balance sheet, we will write the consolidated value of all vendors together in accounts payable account.
yes, sir.
Right? Instead of writing individual vendor account balances, we will be using single GL account called as accounts payable, which will represent total vendor outstanding. In short, this vendor account can also be represented as a supplier account. If I say supplier, is it the same?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any other name
Yes,
for
sir.
vendor apart from supplier? When it comes to sundry, what is written for vendor followed by
Seller.
sundry?
Sundry
Creditors.
creditors.
Sundry creditors.
Creditor. So can we call vendor as a creditor also?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right? If you're talking about purchases, you will purchase from a buyer or you will purchase from a seller.
Seller.
So can I call vendor as a seller?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so whether you call it as vendor, you call it as a supplier, you call it as creditor, you call it as a seller, it is one and the same. Now we are working on S/4HANA system. In S/4HANA system, you will also use another terminology called BP. BP is nothing but what?
Business partner.
Business partner.
So slowly we need to make sure we are getting used to the terminology. We are feeling comfortable, confident with the terminology, because everywhere, everybody may be using different terminology. Wherever you are, please make sure you are comfortable with the terminology. You are able to manage confidently. Similarly, when it comes to customer, other than customer, what other names we will be using?
Buyer. Sundry debtor.
Buyer,
Buyer,
Sundry
debtors,
debtor,
BP.
BR, bill receiver.
BP.
Why BP, sir?
Okay.
BR, no?
No. BP is nothing but business partner. This is applicable only in S/4HANA system.
Okay, business partner. Okay.
Okay. And for asset, any other name for fixed asset? normally we call as asset only. Nobody will specifically use fixed asset. Everybody will use asset only. So you need to understand based on this scenario, this is fixed asset or this is asset. You need to differentiate. You need to understand accordingly. Don't always be under when you're talking about asset. Asset is representing everything. Let me know what kind of asset it is. You should not be putting cross questions like this. Based on the scenario, you need to understand by default. CapEx, anybody heard CapEx?
Sir.
Yes, sir. Capital expenditure.
Capital expenditure.
Sorry. Is CapEx also fixed asset or not?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
CapEx is also a fixed asset. Now, if you're looking at it, first thing we will begin from the vendor and then we will move on to customer followed by fixed asset account. These 3 points clear. Whatever is there on the screen, everybody is clear with it, right?
Yes, AJ. But when we were having our overview class, you mentioned something about like sometimes that account receivable can be subdivided into maybe domestic customer, export customer, third party customer, intercompany. So
That we
how
are
is
about to discuss now. We will discuss further about it now.
okay. I just wanted to know how it will appear on the balance sheet. Okay.
Yeah. This is only at very high level we are understanding just to make sure by looking at vendor, customer, and then fixed asset, you understand what is this, what you will do in this, what are the alternative names for it, and how these are represented in the balance sheet. In short, either on the asset side or on the liability side. That is why we did not expand anything. We only understood this is part of asset, this is part of liability, just to ensure from the basic fundamental point of view, we are clear. When we pick each topic, we will go in detail, we will understand in depth. Okay. All right. Now, if I look at this further, when I say if I look at this further, with the help of this, we will have to understand a different other point. For example, if I bring this balance sheet down, we are talking about vendors here. Normally for vendors, if I put transactions, what is the first transaction that we will do with vendor?
Purchase raw materials,
Sir.
goods or
We will do the purchases. This is the basic point. Similarly, when you're talking about customer, what we will do with customer?
Sales
What is
order.
the
selling,
base transaction?
Sales.
selling of
Sa-
goods or services.
Sales. So we will understand these 2 points first. Once we understand these two, easily you will understand what is fixed asset. Okay. Now, whenever you are making any purchases, in general, in any country, while doing any purchases, are you subjected to pay tax or not?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Whenever you are doing any purchases, are you supposed to pay tax or not on purchases?
Yes,
We will pay
we are
tax.
paying taxes.
Tax is there. Similarly, whenever you do any sale in any country, in any organization or any product, any service, whatever it is,
We pay tax.
majoritarily, are we supposed to collect a tax or not?
Yes, sir.
Collect.
Collect tax.
Sir.
Right? You'll have to collect tax also. In short, when you're talking about accounts payable, when you're talking about accounts receivable, you're talking about vendor transaction, vendor purchases, and then accounts receivable, customer transaction, customer sale. While purchasing from a vendor, are we paying a tax or are we collecting a tax?
We are paying tax.
Paying the tax.
Paying tax.
We are paying tax. Whenever you are paying a tax, the tax that you are paying is called as input tax or output tax.
Input tax.
This is basically called as input tax.
Input tax.
Okay, on your sales, we are collecting a tax from the customer. Whatever the tax that we are collecting from the customer, is it called as input tax or output tax?
Output tax.
This is called as output tax. Now, this is basically called as tax on sales, tax on purchases. This is basically called as tax on sales, tax on purchases. In short, whenever you're talking about any sale, whenever you're talking about any purchases, by default, you should also think about taxation. By default, you should also think about taxation, because everybody is aware without a tax, you cannot buy anything, you cannot sell anything. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
To buy anything, to sell anything, tax is mandatory. Even if you look at any invoice, when I say look at any invoice, normally whenever you buy anything from any shop, from anywhere, you will get bill from the shopkeeper. We will be receiving the bill, right? Can we call bill as an invoice? If I call bill as invoice, am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes, invoice or
Right?
purchasing.
Right. Now, next time, whenever you buy anything, let it be any product, anything you're purchasing, if you look at any bill, don't directly throw it in the dustbin. Look at that bill. Look at that invoice and then see what information is listed on the invoice. In short, the bill, what details are given. Even if you buy anything from a hotel, or even if you go have your lunch, dinner anywhere, still you will get a bill in the billing counter, or the waiter will, bring a booklet keeping a bill inside.
Yes, sir.
Right? Now, when you're looking at any invoice, you should understand what details, what information is listed on the invoice or on the bill. Basically, on invoice, on bill, you will have your company name, in short, your supplier name, who is providing the goods and services.
Yes.
Right? Supplier name will be there, whatever the shop, whatever the company, that name will be there, date will be there, bill
Yes, sir.
date.
Yes, sir.
Supplier name will be there,
Sir.
bill date will be there, bill number will be there. Bill number is called as what number?
Invoice
Invoice
number.
number.
Invoice number.
Bill number is called as invoice number. Okay, in the bill, whatever the number is mentioned, without a number, there is no bill. Even if it is a manual written invoice, even if it is a manual written bill, still that bill book contains the number sequence 1, 2, 3, 4 at least. Agree?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Without number, nobody will give any invoice, nobody will give any bill. Similarly, these fundamental points you need to understand. Okay, vendor name will be there, address will be there, bill date will be there, bill number will be there, list of the product, list of the service, whatever we are purchasing, that item list will be mentioned, quantity of the purchase will be mentioned, and then the amount will be mentioned.
Yes, sir.
Right? Now it may also be possible that you may get some discount.
Yes, sir. Discount
Yes.
count.
Yes, sir.
You may also get discounts. Here also you may get a discount. Tax will be there, discount will be there. And then after purchases, what you will do? In case if you do not like any product, what you will do?
Returns.
Returns.
Yes.
Very
Returns.
Yes.
Return.
We will do returns. If it is a sale return. If it is a purchase return. In short, let us call it as a return. You're talking about vendor. From vendor you are purchasing. Vendor return is representing a purchase return. If you're talking about customer, from customer or to customer we are selling it. Any return with respect to customer is basically called as your sales return. Okay, and after doing all this kind of a thing, sometimes what will happen, you will pay. Sometimes what will happen, you will pay not before receiving the product. What kind of payment is it? If you are not receiving the product but making the payment?
Advance.
Advance.
Advances. It is applicable for both customer vendor.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Advance payment is applicable for both customer as well as for vendor. And finally, after receiving the bill or invoice, whatever the amount you are making, is it called as final payment?
Yes, sir.
In short, we will be dealing with the two types of payment, advance payment and normal payment, basically the final payment. Advance payment is before the invoice, final payment after the invoice. Is the difference clear?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
One is before receiving the bill and the other one is after receiving the bill. Now these transactions slowly we need to understand. Okay. And next point, what we will do is, let me take this up and then put this here. Okay, let's put this here. Next point, immediately what we need to understand, we will have to understand something called, this is common for all, data flow in SAP FICO. Whenever we are talking about data flow in SAP FICO, this is something that we already understood. Right? What is the data flow that we understood in SAP FICO before?
Business transactions, business requirements, configuration,
First one is
master
business
data,
requirement, second one
Typical.
is configuration,
configuration,
third one
master
is
data,
master data,
fourth is
fourth one is
transaction data, and fifth
Transaction
is
data.
reports.
Reports.
Third one
reports.
is
If there is any
reports.
problem in report, what you will give?
Support.
Support. This is the flow, this is the process which happens in every project wherever there is SAP FICO. Now we are talking about business requirement. We are talking about business requirement about any particular process. About any particular process. Now we were talking about three topics now. What are those three topics which we discussed just now?
Account payable, account receivable, and asset accounting.
Right? Accounts payable, accounts receivable, and then fixed assets. Now we need to understand what is the business requirement of any client, of their accounts payable, of their accounts receivable, of their fixed asset. Without knowing this business requirement, their business process, we will not be able to configure in SAP. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Unless
Yes,
we
sir.
do not know what is their business requirement, how they are dealing with their vendor, their customer, how they are dealing with their fixed asset, you will not be in a position to configure, even though you know all the configuration, even though you are good at all the T codes, screens, everything, still you cannot move because you do not know the business requirement. In short, you need to sit with the client user, understand their current business process, make sure it is applicable or it is available in standard SAP, then only take it forward. Sometimes client will tell a business requirement, different points that they say that we want to do it, which may not be available in standard SAP. You need to understand by looking at the business requirement, by understanding the client business process requirement, whether it is a standard fit or not. In short, whether it is a straight fit or there is a gap. There is something called fit gap analysis, you would have heard, right?
Yes, sir.
Something called fit gap analysis. When you're talking about fit gap analysis, whether it is a straight fit, when you're talking about straight fit, you're talking about for your process, there is a configuration in SAP, there is a master, there is a transaction, there is a report available in standard SAP. All I need to do is maintain the configuration, everything will work. Then it is a straight fit. But your client is asking something else. He's asking system to work in a different way, system to behave in a different way, which is not possible in standard SAP. You may need to go for some kind of customization. When you're talking about fit, standard configuration will meet the requirement. or will meet the client business requirement. Alright, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Whenever you're talking about fit, standard configuration will meet the client or business requirement. Now here, point number 1, standard configuration will meet the client business requirement. Point number 2, when there is a gap. Whenever there is a gap, standard configuration will not meet the client business requirement. Here,
Customizing.
Ricef objects, in short, customization will meet client business requirement. Are these two statements clear?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
These two statements are clear, right? You need to understand whenever you're talking about fit, you're talking about straight fit with the help of standard functionality or with the help of standard system configuration, your business requirement is met. When you're talking about gap, there is a gap, meaning whatever is there in the standard SAP, client is not okay with it, or client process is not fitting in it. You need to do some kind of customization. Whenever we are talking about customization, we are talking about Ricef object. Now, this Ricef object, whatever is related to gap, basically, you need to identify the gap. When you're identifying the gap, you need to be very specific. What is this gap and how we are going to fill the gap? You will usually fill the gap with the help of Ricef object. Each letter in the Ricef contains a meaning. If I'm talking about Ricef in this format, WRICEF. Each letter contains a meaning. W is representing what?
Workflow.
Workflow.
Workflow. R is representing what?
Reports.
Reports.
R is representing reports. I is representing what?
Interface.
Integration.
Interfaces, correct. C is representing what?
Conversions.
Conversion.
Conversions. E is representing what?
Enhancement.
Enhancement. F is representing what?
Forms.
Smart forms.
Forms, basically smart forms.
Smart forms.
Okay, this is what we need to understand, and this becomes mandatory right from the beginning for everybody to be very comfortable, confident with the system, because now we are going to start doing all the business process configuration, understand all the business process configuration. While understanding itself, if you're able to understand whether this is a standard or it is a customization, which will make you feel comfortable, confident on the subject. Tomorrow when you're working in any project, everywhere customization is there. Okay, now SAP standard and SAP customized. Whenever you're talking about SAP standard, these points are related to programs, T codes, tables. Majoritarily program, T code, table. Anything else? Only this thing. The T code is including master data, transaction data, report. For everything you need a T code. Agree?
Sir.
Here also same thing. Okay, these three things. And in SAP standard, these things will begin from A star to X star. What do I mean by A star to X star? It can begin from anywhere in between A to X. In short, any program starting from letter A to X is SAP standard. Any transaction code starting from A to X is SAP standard. Any table starting from A to X is SAP standard. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right? When you're talking about SAP customized, what are all left from your alphabets?
Y and Z.
Y and Z.
Y and Z.
Y and Z. So it can be Y star to Z star. So whenever you're talking about custom SAP, okay, when there is a gap, or when you talk about there is a customization, your program or your T code, your table will begin either from Y star, in short Y series, or Z series. So it will be easy for anybody to understand if there is any customization in any program, in any T code, in any table, by looking at this Y and Z starting letter.
Yes, sir. Clarity will come.
Yes, sir.
Right? As a consultant, we need to ensure, yes, I'm able to understand this is SAP standard functionality, this is a customized functionality, by looking at either T code or table or program, the first letter. First thing, you need to understand what are all this. This is how you are going to identify whether it is standard SAP or it is a customized SAP. These 2 points clear? We will go in detail as we move forward, but initially, to ensure you are comfortable, you are adding different other points as you are moving forward. Now here, when you're talking about workflow, basically whenever we talk about workflow, what is a workflow?
Used for like authorizations.
Day-to-day work.
Workflow is basically
Approval matrix.
Approval.
approvals. Workflow is basically approval. I create something, but I don't want something to be directly, taken forward until and unless it is approved by somebody else. Now you may be creating different things for the approval, which we will understand as we move forward. But at this moment, understand workflow is nothing but approval. Wherever you want somebody to approve any transaction, somebody to approve anything, that is called as approval, workflow. Because tomorrow
Yes, sir.
somebody might ask you, have you worked on any workflow report and all. So do not get confused. Workflow is nothing but approval. Somewhere it is pending for somebody to approve it. Because nobody will use approval, everybody will use it is pending with workflow, or workflow is pending, workflow is incomplete. These kind of terminologies people will be using in the project, in the business client user also. Make sure we are comfortable, familiar with the terminologies. When you're talking about report, everybody is aware of the report, right? Which will be used for different analytics, analysis, master data and all. Report is used for 2 points. Report is used for 2 points. In your data flow of SAP FICO, above report, after the configuration, how many points are left?
2 points.
What are those 2 points?
Master data
Master data,
transaction.
transaction data.
Whenever you're talking about report, blindly remember your report is specifically to see the transactions or to see the master. Am I correct?
Sir.
Whatever the masters that you're creating, you will generate a report for your master. Whatever the transactions that you're creating, you will generate a report for the transaction in different ways, in different format, for different purposes. Now there are many standard report. If any standard report is not meeting the client or business requirement, they will go for a custom development or they will go for a customized report. When you're talking about interfaces, what is this interface?
Bank to bank.
Bank interface.
So in short, in simple words, when you're talking about interface, what are we representing?
APIs.
Are we connecting system with any other system?
Yes,
Connection.
APIs.
Right? When we're talking about interface, in short, we are talking about connecting our system with some other system.
Sir.
Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
We are connecting
Yes,
our
sir.
system with some other system. Now, which other system we are connecting? It can be anything. So, in short, your interface is nothing but connection between two systems. Now, these two systems can be SAP to SAP or SAP to non-SAP. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
When you are connecting between two systems, this is basically SAP to SAP or SAP to non-SAP. SAP to non-SAP. Now, when you are connecting two systems, what you will do while connecting the system? You will do the data exchange.
Sir.
Right? To
Yes, sir.
exchange data. There are 2 points in our data flow in SAP FICO by word called data. What are those 2 points?
Inbound, outbound.
EDI.
No. What are those 2 data that is there in part of your SAP FICO data flow?
Master data, transaction data.
Transaction data, master data.
EDI.
Master and a transaction. Right? When you're connecting two systems, the whole objective is to do the data exchange. You will exchange either master data or transaction data. Am I correct?
Sir.
Nothing else. They are going to process master, or you are going to send the master, or you are going to process a transaction, or you are going to send a transaction. Agree?
Sir.
And here you will have 2 types of interfaces. One is your inbound. What is the other one?
Outbound.
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 Meaning interface inbound, interface outbound. Interface inbound means what? We are receiving
inbound.
data or we are sending data?
We're receiving the data.
Receiving the data.
Receiving data inbound.
Inbound means we are receiving data. Outbound means
That sending.
Sending data.
we are sending data. And here when you're talking about we are receiving data, when you're talking about we are sending data, we is representing SAP here. Am I correct?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
When we're talking about we is representing SAP here. If SAP is receiving data, it is called as inbound workflow, inbound interface. If SAP is sending data, it is called as outbound interface. Now, to connect two systems, there are so many things. To connect two systems, there are so many things. One is nothing but API. What is API?
Middleware system.
Advanced Program Interface.
Full form of API?
Advanced Program Interface.
That's program interface.
No.
Application
program interface.
Application Program
interface.
Application program interface. Usually, whenever somebody is talking about interfaces, the most commonly used terminology is API. Most commonly used terminology is API. Which API are we using? And there is one more terminology which we will be using. Begins from M. Any guess?
Middleware system.
Middleware. One is API you need to understand, another one is middleware you need to understand. Only the terminology you have to be comfortable with initially. As we move forward, I'll make you understand slowly what are all this. But initially, please make sure you are going to add a different other terminology, different other points. As we move forward, each point we will be connecting with different business processes to understand how these are used. And as a FICO consultant, how you need to ensure you're comfortable, confident with all these points. Okay, one is your API, another one is middleware, which you must understand. And there is one more thing that you need to understand here called as iDocs. Okay, we also need to understand iDoc, API, middleware when you're talking about interfaces. In short, interface is nothing but connection between two systems, either to send the data or to receive the data, which we will be representing data exchange between two systems. These two systems can be SAP non-SAP. And here you will be having inbound, outbound. Inbound is nothing but where you are receiving the data. Outbound is nothing but where you are sending the data. Both are possible in interface. And in every project, in every client, you will be majoritarily finding interfaces created. Wherever you go, majoritarily, in every client, in every project, there will be one interface. At least one interface will be there. Okay. And when you're talking about conversions, what are this?
Batch data conversion.
When you're talking about conversion, batch data conversion, anything which is straight away related to a FICO consultant in this that we can relate?
Upgrade data, upgrade version, upgrade your SAP.
Anybody heard something called BDC upload?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Most of you would have uploaded BDC upload, right? BDC upload is something that you need to understand as part of conversion. And you have your migrate your data, you have your LSMW, all these are part of your conversions only. Okay, but let us try to keep only BDC, because you know migrate your data is SAP standard. You also know LSMW is also SAP standard. Correct? So we are not writing those two just to ensure, because we are specifically talking about customization. As part of customization, BDC upload is what you need to remember here. Next one, enhancement. What is this enhancement? When you're talking about enhancement, what points we need to remember?
Reports?
Any
No.
specific point?
Currency?
No.
User exits, customer exits.
Checks, payment advice.
Documents?
No.
Yeah.
Can we call it
APL
as?
on an IR.
Anybody heard this?
Yes, sir.
Anybody heard these kind of points before? Baddie, user
I saw in
exit,
the LSM,
this one.
I
No,
saw
sir.
in the LSMW.
Okay. Slowly we will have to understand, or slowly we will have to make sure we are feeling comfortable with these points, this terminology. Because tomorrow when you're in the market, when you're in the project, when you're in the interview, if somebody is putting these kind of points, it should not be a surprise to you that I'm hearing this for the first time. I do not know what is this. You should feel comfortable, you should feel confident, you know what is this, you'll be in a position to talk at least in a convincing way. And then when you're talking about forms or smart form, any printable data, am I correct? Anything that you would like to print, can we call it as a smart form or can we call it as a form? Right? There will be many data that you will be printing, like your customer invoice, payment advice, right? And then there are many other things that you will be printing, like bank letters and all. Everything is part of a form or a smart form, which we need to understand what data we are printing, in which format we are printing, how the printing is happening. All these things are part of your smart form. As a FICO consultant, it is mandatory for all of us to know this Ricef object, at least at a high level at this stage. As we move forward, we will elaborate these points as and when scenarios we will come across. I will make you understand practical example, practical scenario. For all of us to work on this Ricef object, we need to prepare a document. To work on the Ricef object, which document need to be prepared?
FSD.
Function specific.
FSD.
Right? We also need to understand something called FS or FSD is equal to what?
Functional specific.
Specification document.
Document.
Tomorrow in your interview, somebody will definitely put this question: have you worked on FS or FSD? Both terminology is one and the same. Do not get confused. Right? Wherever possible, if there are any other alternative name, first thing you need to understand those alternative name, because not necessarily everybody will put the same word that you are aware of. If somebody is putting FSD, if somebody is putting FS, don't have any confusion here. Both are same. We will need to understand what is this FS, what is this FSD, what is the format, what we will do it, how we will prepare it. We will be understanding conceptually, logically here. And all these points we need to make sure we are comfortable with before we start our accounts payable, accounts receivable, fixed asset modules. Because these are all the key business processes every organization, every company uses in real time. Now coming back to this, we are talking about transaction, purchases, sale, which includes your tax, discount, return, advance payment, and then final payment. Here also same thing. Next point, if we specifically write down here, purchase process and then sales process. When we are talking about purchase process, and similarly when we are talking about the sales process, we need to understand certain points here. In the purchase process, you will have two types of purchases. Okay, one is, I can say, cash purchases. What is the other one?
Credit purchase. Credit purchase.
Credit purchases. Is the similar logic applicable for sale?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
I can write cash sales. I can write credit sale. I can put cash sale. I can put credit sale. Now, when you're talking about cash purchases, it is nothing but purchasing and paying on the spot.
Sir.
Yes,
Right? You're purchasing and you're paying at the same time is your cash purchases. Cash sale is nothing but you're selling and receiving the cash on the spot or at the same time. But majoritarily in any organization, in any company, what sales, what purchases are more? Is it cash or is it credit?
Credit.
Credit, sir.
Credit.
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 Credit are more. Right? Let me highlight this with green. Let me also highlight this with green. Okay. Now, the basic accounting entry for purchases, the basic accounting entry for sale is what? Purchase means you will be writing purchase account debit. What account credit?
Vendor account credit. Vendor account.
Credit.
Vendor account credit. For sale, what will be the accounting entry?
Customer debit.
Customer to
credit.
sales.
Customer debit, sales credit.
Customer debit and
sir.
sales credit. Is this accounting entry correct in both ways?
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The moment you're writing vendor account The moment you're writing vendor account, the moment you're writing customer account in any journal entry, remember blindly it is your credit sale, blindly it is your credit purchases. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Because you're creating a liability in vendor account, you're creating an asset in customer account. Yes, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, vendor account is what liability? Current liability,
Current liability, current asset. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
right? Vendor is a current liability, customer is what?
Current asset.
Current asset.
Customer is a current asset. Now, slowly we need to understand. Fundamentally, conceptually, we are comfortable, we are confident with the content. So that as you move forward, as we look at different transaction, we feel comfortable, we feel that yes, this I know all this kind of a thing, I'm able to relate everything from the reporting perspective, from the different kind of scenarios, reports, or the transactions to be understood. We need to ensure on the basic fundamental you are clear without any confusion. Only then, as we set up the system, do the configuration, post different kind of entries, generate variety of report, you'll be able to practically relate, okay, this is why companies are using it in this way. This is the reason in SAP you have these many reports. In SAP, these many T codes are available. Otherwise, we will see for vendor why so many things are there. All these things we need to ensure practically we are able to connect with respect to the client business process. If this is not happening, whatever we understand, whatever we read, whatever we talk to the other person later on will not create the impact. When you talk to the other person, make sure other person should feel that whosoever you or anybody else is talking in a right way. All right. And here vendor is a current liability, customer is a current asset. Now, next one, you're talking about vendor current liability, customer current asset, and from vendor, what we're doing is purchases. Here, what we do is a sale. One way of segregation purchases, one way of segregation of sale is cash and credit, right? One way of segregation is cash and sale, cash sale and then credit sale, cash purchases and credit purchases. Another way of segregation of purchasing is different. One is your direct purchases, two is PO based purchases.
Yeah.
Okay, one is direct and another one is purchase order based. Similarly, you have direct sales, SO based sales. Here, when I'm talking about PO, what do I mean by PO?
Purchase order.
Purchase order.
Purchase order. When I'm talking about SO, what do I mean here?
Sales order.
Sales order here. In any organization, majoritarily purchases will happen based on the purchase order or directly.
Purchase order.
Purchase order.
Majorly on purchase order.
Right? Majoritarily in any organization, purchases will happen based on the purchase order. In any organization, majoritarily sales will happen directly or through a sales order.
Sales order.
Through a sales order. Okay. Now, if we classify this further, I'll put point number 1, FI purchases. Point number 2, purchases.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Purchase directly happening in FI, purchase happening through Similarly, sales, can I mention FI sales? Sales, what else I can put? Sales or any other?
SD sales.
SD sales.
SD sale. Okay. Now, you are which module consultant?
FICO.
FICO consultant. We are all FICO consultants. When you're talking about you're a FICO consultant, is FICO one module or FICO two modules?
Two modules.
Two modules.
Two module. FI is a separate module, CO is a separate module. What is this FI called?
Finance.
Financial accounting.
Financial
accounting.
accounting. Right? CO is nothing but your cost accounting.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
CO is nothing but cost accounting or controlling. FI is financials or financial accounting. Now, debit credit accounting entries for your purchases, for your sale is related to FI or is it related to CO?
Fine.
FI. That's why here you are clearly writing FI purchases, not FICO purchase. Yes, no? We are not writing FICO purchase, right? We are writing FI purchase because your financial accounting is maintained in FI. Here you are not writing FICO sale, you are writing FI sale. Now, if it is FI, it is direct. Agree?
Sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
FI sale, I can say
Direct method.
direct impact in accounting or direct impact in accounting. This is also direct impact in accounting. Are these two lines clear?
Yes, sir.
FI purchases, direct impact in accounting. FI sale is also direct impact in accounting. When it comes to purchases, impact in account through integration. How is this getting impacted in your accounting? Directly or through integration?
Integration.
Integration.
Through integration. Right? And ST also same?
Sir.
Yes,
Impact in accounting through integration. Now, this integration is basically what? What two modules are here? Point 1, point 2, what are these two modules?
FIM.
This is called as FIMM
Integration.
integration. This is called as what? What two modules are here?
FISD.
FISD integration. And before you start customer account, before you start vendor account, these are all the points that you must be aware of, without which you will not be able to understand what is AP, what is AR practically in a real environment in any organization. Because as we know, in every organization, purchases are based on purchase order, sales are based on sales order. If you do not know purchases based on the purchase order is part of module, module purchase data will come to FI module through integration called as FIMM integration. And similarly, in any organization, sales are happening through sales order. Sales order is part of SD. SD data will come to accounting with the help of integration called as FISD integration. In any interview that you attend related to FICO, are these two topics mandatory or not? FIMM, FISD integration?
Yes, sir.
Right? Why everybody is asking this? Because no organization can do the business without sale, without purchase. Their purchases, their sales are strictly based on FIMM. And you must be aware of how data is coming from FI to MM or FI to ST or ST to FI, MM to FI. How data is being exchanged. Through integration, we need to understand, and this is where you need to tell accounts payable, accounts receivable. Only when you know all the points, whatever we are writing on the sheet now, with these points only you need to tell somebody, I know accounts payable, I know accounts receivable. Otherwise, please do not tell anybody, I know AP, I know AR. If you do not know purchase order, sales order, credit sale, cash sale, credit purchase, cash purchase, integration, Ricef object, okay, what is standard, what is customized, these points and all, if you are not aware, please do not tell anybody you know FI accounts payable, you know FI accounts receivable, because these are incomplete. Whatever we are looking at on the screen is only the very basic fundamental for any FICO consultant to be aware of. If you do not know this thing, it will be difficult for us to understand, manage whatever is happening in any project in real environment. We are not talking with respect to configuration. We are talking ensuring you're in a project on day one of your SAP FICO consulting job. You must be in a position to understand all these points on your own. Even if somebody is talking, please ensure, yes, I am familiar, I am comfortable with these points. That will enable you to feel comfortable, confident, rather than asking somebody or feeling uncomfortable. Should I ask or I should not ask? What they will think if I ask? These kind of a confusions, questions we should not have. Make sure you're confident enough wherever you go, to whosoever you talk. And with that confidence, with that knowledge, we need to step out. For that, we'll have to put a little extra effort and ensure you are comfortable, not getting confused. All your doubts, confusions as we move forward will be automatically rectified, because we will be dealing with different practical scenarios, whatever is possible in a real environment, whatever you do as a FICO consultant. In the similar way, we will set up the system and ensure that you are following these points strictly, you are understanding, and any confusions, whatever you get it, please put messages in the group, and you will be interacting, you will be getting responses from others. And there are many people in the group who are already working as consultants, who are working as accountants. I hope everybody is aware of these points, right? From the business point of view, from the consulting point of view. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Share and exchange your views, knowledge in the group, so that everybody will get benefited. There are many people who are from the business point of view. There are many people who are from the consulting point of view in your group. Ensure that you exchange the data. If somebody is already working in your accounting or finance domain, tell that in my company, this is how accounts payable is happening. In my company, this is how accounts receivable process is happening. If somebody is working as a consultant, list out maybe a few lines. In my company, in my client, this is how it is happening. Don't reveal your companies and all. Just try to see if you are able to write down your current process, either as a user or as an accountant, or your generic understanding, or as a consultant. What is your understanding? Not in a generic way, from your company point of view, wherever you have seen, whether you are able to put it in words or not, and see if the others are able to understand it. Getting my point? And you'll have to be very interactive from now onwards in the group with respect to the subject. And the assignments, points, scenarios, whatever we are going to take, whatever I'm going to give, I want everybody to contribute. I want everybody to put your effort to understand conceptually. Only then things will work in a proper manner. You will gain more confidence. All right, fine then. Let me stop this here. And the configuration part, once the server is up today, we will be starting from tomorrow onwards. All right, bye.
Share the Excel sheet in the group, sir.
Please